can you actually get to a place where you fully trust someone after betrayal? So consciously, I always believed, yes, there's got to be a way where you guys can reconcile and recover. But in actuality, recovery over the past 4+ years has been really hard, and the trust process was slow, even though it was really developing consistently over time. So somewhere in there, I was like, okay, it's still got to be available. I think what complicated the situation, and now that I have experienced it and come to this awareness, I think one of the things that betrayal trauma, women that are recovering from betrayal trauma can maybe get confused about, and why this is a difficult issue to parse out, is because we get it mixed up with the grief that we feel from the betrayal. And so let me explain what I mean by this. The other day I had the realization that I actually feel just as safe in my current relationship with Patrick, 4+ years in recovery, about 4.5 now, as I did before discovery. And that was kind of like a, oh, moment for me. Because, as things have progressed over time, things have gotten better and better and better and better. And I feel happier and happier and happier and, all these kinds of things, and more relaxed. But we've really had a lot of up and downs even through that. And I've really emotionally struggled even through that. So the awareness that I had the other day was, I am getting trust and grief mixed up. So when I ask myself, do I trust Patrick now in this current relationship? And do I feel safe, secure, relaxed, and happy in this relationship with this human being? Absolutely, I do. And that's actually a pretty easy question for me to answer. But the reason I think before this, it was a little, sometimes I'd get like, how do I feel about, when people ask me, can you be happy after betrayal? When you reconcile, like people asking me to describe that, it's hard because with it comes grief, and the grief does not go away. So if you've ever seen that picture, that meme that goes around, we have this thought that as we heal, the grief will get smaller. But in reality, what happens, the grief is the grief and it stays there. The experience is there. It's painful. It will never not be painful to think about it. But our capacity increases. So if you have a jar and there's grief, a lot of times we think that the grief gets smaller and the jar stays the same. But the reality of grief is that the grief stays the same, and we as the jar get bigger. Our capacity, our resiliency, how we create our life to be full of things that we enjoy and to be full and satisfying, and in our relationship as we rebuild trust and all of this, our capacity and our life and our curiosity and our health and our recovery all expand. But the grief is still there. And so I had that realization the other day where I was like, that will never go away. And it wouldn't go away whether we were together or not. If I had chosen divorce and I tried to be in a relationship with someone else, the grief from the betrayal and the pain of the betrayal and the things that Patrick and I went through because of that would always be part of my life. That's not something that I can change. So the only decision then I had to make was, if the grief is going to be part of my life because this bad thing happened, do I like this person? Do I feel safe with this person? Do I like the relationship I am in with this person? Or would I like to be alone? Or would I rather be in a relationship and try all of this with someone else? And all of that is no. I would much rather be in a relationship with this person who is now honest and vulnerable and trustworthy, and has gone through this healing process and has become a better person, and I have become a better person. This person knows all of my triggers, knows all of my wounding, knows all of my pain, is very capable and good at supporting me through all of that, helps me, encourages me, is my biggest cheerleader, is my biggest supporter, all of these things. And then same thing, like I know everything that he has gone through at this point, and we've worked through so much together. So when I think about it that way, it just gave me more clarity, and I wanted to share it because I feel like that's really, really easy for us to get mixed up. And that, I think, makes a lot of sense to me why it feels so confusing. Because I think we go, well, if we trust somebody, the grief will go away. And that's not true. It's sort of like when we think, well, if I'm doing recovery work for my betrayal, then I should be happy all the time. That's just not true. trauma is trauma. And so I follow this coach who talks about anxiety a lot and intrusive thoughts and things of that nature. Lily Sace, by the way, you should follow her. And when she talks about anxiety, she goes, healing from anxiety doesn't mean that you don't ever have anxiety anymore. It just means that your relationship to it changes and your ability to feel that emotion and not stress out about it shifts. So I think that's the reality, that like we kind of need to let go of this idea that healing means that nothing bad will ever happen to us and that we won't feel anger or sadness or grief or despair or anxiety or depression ever again. The longer that we live life, the more we will experience pain, the more we will experience things that hurt. Healing from them doesn't mean that if we take time to think about that experience, that it won't hurt. It's a bad thing that happened. People that have gone through really traumatic experiences, maybe that we can relate to in a different way. And I won't name them out here, but you can think of, okay, well, if I thought of somebody being abused or going through a really traumatic situation or having PTSD, what would I associate with that? And you think about those situations, you think that about that person living a happy, healthy life in 20 years from now. That doesn't mean that if they reflect on that moment of pain, that it doesn't hurt or that some of those emotions may not come up. It just means that we have a different relationship to them. Now we have tools and resources where we don't live in that moment. Where we know what to do if a trigger comes up, where we know how to support our mind and our body mentally and emotionally when we have difficult things, where we've been able to create a life or in reconciliation or relationship that we really like, that we feel safe in, that we live our lives in the window of tolerance, that we live most of our lives in a place of safety in our nervous system, that we live our lives feeling more of these positive emotions more easily than we did when we were actually going through the healing process, when it felt like maybe we would never get there. That's what healing looks like. Not that grief will not exist in the future, and not that grief will completely disappear, not that we'll never feel anxiety or depression again. But really, I think healing is kind of being able to live in reality, understanding that that's part of life, and that whether we choose to be alone or with somebody else or with this person, that will always be there. Now, when we choose to reconcile with this person, we want to make sure that that's a healthy choice. So like I said, like Patrick's never relapsed. He has rebuilt my trust tremendously. I can answer that question and say, do you trust Patrick? Absolutely. Do you believe that he will stay in recovery? Absolutely. Do you believe that he's never relapsed? Absolutely. And he's had 5 polygraphs, I think, that he has passed over the past 4.5 years to back that up. So I definitely want to make sure that I'm not saying that like, just because grief will come with us, reconciliation is always the right choice. There are many relationships that I have seen where the addict partner is not doing the work and they're still gaslighting, or they're not taking responsibility, or they're manipulating you, or they're not empathizing, or they're not feeling your pain. They're not helping you recover. And those are not healthy relationships, and those are not healthy situations, and you do not have to tolerate that. When you have somebody that is really doing the work and loves you and is able to empathize and do the recovery work and become a better person and really sit in your pain and help you heal, and you are emotionally struggling with, I love this person and they are a good person and they are doing all the right things, but I am still struggling, then I just wanted to share this perspective that sort of hit me recently about the difference between those two things and how they can both be true in our lives, but they are separate, and they don't, if we confuse them, it can feel very emotionally confusing. Like, well, why is this still so heavy in some ways? While in other ways it feels so light and free and good because we've done all of this work. And so I just recognized, I think I was mixing up, maybe I thought grief should be smaller, or it shouldn't pop its head out here and there. And that's just not reality. Like emotions come in waves for whatever reason, and there will be days where we're more susceptible to them. Maybe we're tired, maybe we're on our period, maybe this, maybe that. Maybe it's a specific date that our body remembers and we feel a little sad, or we have a little depression, or maybe there's genetic tendencies in our family that trend us towards depression or anxiety. And then now we have a situation that is an environmental external trigger to activate all of those pathways in our brain and in our body. So I hope that's encouraging, maybe just offer a little bit of a different perspective. But I think for me and Patrick, this was like a big aha for me in my recovery journey. And I was like, If I ask myself the question, do I feel safe, secure, relaxed, and do I trust Patrick? That's an easy yes for me. Even though I still periodically struggle with the various emotions that come from betrayal and recovery. So, wanted to share that with you. I hope that's encouraging. Drop a question below. Let me know what your experience has been. Does this shift anything for you in your perspective? Let me know thoughts, questions, reflections.